It is top of the hour, and I want to make sure to welcome everybody out today to our 8th Communities of Practice live from the SDE offices here in beautiful Boise, Idaho. So good morning to all LEAs across the state. I'm super excited to have everyone today. We have a huge, full agenda. And I want to make sure that we get to everything. So just right up front, I want to let everybody know that we always provide a lot of content, as much content as possible. And some of this you're going to have to come back to. So just want to make sure everybody understands our whole intent with these communities of practice is to bring content to you, to stir up some conversations, some new methods, ways of thinking. And we're going to talk a little bit more as we get through some of this content on other ways that we can further enhance this experience for you guys as we move forward with these communities of practice. So good morning and welcome to everybody. So again, big jam-packed agenda today. We are going to do the what is on your radar for the month of June, which is huge. Can't wait to show you all that good stuff. A very, very brief recap of what we did in April. We're going to talk about for federal program of the month, we're really talking about time and effort because that applies to every single federal program out there or grant. We're going to do some amazing tips and tricks for you today. We're going to teach you about how to make a data dashboard, just enough to get dangerous, and make one for yourself. We're going to talk about inventory tracking, and that's our main professional development today. And we're going to start talking, if we have time at the end, stir up some ideas about year-end planning, accrual strategies, closeout, those types of things. And we will get into more detail of those next month. And then we'll get into a couple upcoming June trainings. We're going to do one on maintenance of effort, a refresher training. We'll try and talk about components of Medicaid, special education, all federal grants, just how to understand what maintenance of effort means to you at the district level. All right. Big stuff coming up here for May and June. Most of these May dates have passed, although you still have 3 left here at the end of the month. So we've got the National School Lunch Program renewal that's important for districts and charters. So check out the child nutrition page if you need more information on that. And then our last day again of the month, we have the school calendars due to school finance. And if you have been identified with significant disproportionality, which is part of special education programs, you will have been notified by now by Debbie Smith, and she will be in contact with you guys about putting together a plan. Okay, for June, this is again the data acquisition calendar found on the school finance page under calendars. June is huge. We have 3 screens worth of June dates. You've got all kinds of different grant program things that are due. The very top line here talks about determinations and levels of support. You'll be contacted by Debbie Smith if you have been identified in a certain category and need to have any sort of plan of action put together. And then you've got 21st century demographics reports coming, access appeals, school finance I've left on here just to show that there's a lot of different components for our business managers this month that they're going to be talking about for those advanced payment schedules, any appeals from that access program, Indian student report for the Indian education program. You'll notice around June 15th, there's a lot due here. That's where our preliminary budgets, we call it our preliminary application for IDEA special education funding is due. That's the application where you go in and you say, yes, I want the money. Here's a very preliminary budget of a way that I could spend it. I know I'll have to change it later once I have my carryover incorporated. But yes, I want the money. Yes, I have systems and policies and practices in place to take it. That's what that is for. And I've got to have time to approve everybody's. So I need them by June 15th, just in case I need you to tweak something. All right, Gear Up semester 2 is up as well. And we've got the application for alternative secondary schools through school choice with Michelle Clement Taylor. Lots of stuff here. I know I'm flipping through this quickly, but we've got a lot of dates here. June's also got a lot of data collection reports, big ones for special ed. Those top 4 are huge. And just a note around that 60-day timeline and the early transition data collections, those are for special education indicators 11 and 12. There is going to be a new form that is coming out soon. You'll be getting contacted by Elisa Fuchs and or Debbie Smith very soon about what that new change will look like. Hopefully that will be better for you guys. And then look, we've got McKinney-Vento. We've got some information that you data collection period going to Emily Summers, some IC staff data collection through school finance and attendance and enrollment. Holy cow, you guys are going to be busy. And this is, program manager stuff, and we've got a lot of finance stuff here. The continuous improvement plans are due, court order tuition equivalency, the Gun-Free Schools Act, continuing on. Holy cow, you guys. We've got the 21st Century Community Learning Centers. So again, these are all, a lot of these you'll see the required by column second to the right. It's going to tell you if it's a requirement under federal law, state law. We also have who it's going to in this lovely calendar of events. So make sure that you take a look at this. The early childhood outcomes counts going to Shannon. Those English language learner assurances, those certifications, all super important. So don't forget Maria. That consolidated federal and state grant application, that's that CFSGA. Guess what? It's also due. And it says Brian, but there's a lot of folks in that office there for federal programs that can help out with that. So make sure if you guys need help with that you reach out before those deadlines, before the last day, please. I know, like for myself, when we're going through the IDEA application, it gets a little crazy, and there's certain things you guys need to all ask that are specific to you. So please spread it out, get to that as soon as you guys can. And again, we've got some other Indian education opportunities in here that you guys need to put through. We've got the career ladder data system, the final McKinney-Vento data, it's got to get verified, equitable service intent. Boy, that's a lot. So don't lose sight of this calendar. We put it up here not to explain every item, but just to showcase, holy cow, you guys probably have to talk between finance and programs for different numbers and make sure that you are on top of these dates. Nobody wants to be caught off guard or miss out on an opportunity for some sort of funding. So make sure that you guys are doing that. When I send out the recap, which will be sooner this time, I promise, I've got links to the April webinar. We're going to do a super quick recap because there was some really, really important stuff in there. We talked about the Build America, Buy America Act that applies to some federal programs, including special education, which is strange to me, but it included it. And then the professional development, we talked about the compliance supplement. That's like all fiscal auditing stuff, but it gives you the keys to the kingdom to know what the auditors are looking for, which is why it's important to know what's in there. And then the data dashboards, we talked about, is anyone using that? And we had some interest, so we are going to spoil you today and train you how to do that. All right, so let's just super high level. Again, this is just enough, if you missed last month, to get you interested to go look at the full training. We talked about Build America, Buy America. It's to try and focus some of the efforts and contracts and goods and services to go to American-made products and companies and contractors. I've got links in here. This is a straight out of last month's. It talks about all iron and steel and infrastructure manufactured goods. This is for big production, big contracted or construction overhauls or remodels or buildings. If you're going to be blending and braiding funding, you got to know what this means, because there's certain federal funding streams that say, as of July 1st of 2023, if you're going to use, for instance, IDEA Part B special ed money to help with your remodel of a classroom, you're going to be held to having to buy iron and steel and certain manufactured goods and stuff that are from American made. And so no one wants to be penalized for something. So you need to know what it is. And if you have any questions, please reach out individually. I've got links to the full information at the top of that slide. It'll take you to the list of actual programs. I've got a screenshot here that shows the state grant 611. That's IDEA Part B. That's your Fund 257. Again, I'm confused why it's in here. Even our little tiny preschool grants are in there. So make sure that you take a look at that list and see if it applies to anything else that you might be in charge of. All right, and we did a lot of slides last month on the compliance supplement. Single audits are A part of our daily lives, if you have any federal grant funding over $750,000, then your school district auditor that you hire has to take a deeper dive look at that program, or at least choose one of them to do each year. The compliance supplement is basically, again, the auditor's list of what they have to do and what they need to audit to make sure that you guys are in compliance with federal grant programs and use of funds, cash management, everything under the sun. That is their Bible. That is what tells them what to do. This is really, really important. The intention was to help stop fraud, waste, abuse, but also to help anyone that has those programs have utilized the funds for their full intention, to make sure that they're using those funds the right way to have better outcomes. And we talked about the auditor's responsibility. They don't make that stuff up. It is in there telling them what to do. So the key to that is, if you know what's in there, you know what you're supposed to be doing, and you know what they'll be looking for. So you can get it all in compliance and be ready to go squeaky clean. That's the intention. Then we talked a little tiny bit. We talked just, hey, any interest here? And we said we got some interest on analytics that you could put together, better ways possibly to portray some data. And we're going to have a nice little training on that today, how you can use this data to just enhance your presentations to your audience, whether it's your own internal folks in your business office so everyone understands, or possibly sharing with your board or program directors. It's a great, great tool. So with that, again, we've got a jam-packed, I know I'm talking fast. This is going to be a refresher. This is time and effort refresher. So I'm not getting super in the weeds, but when I send out the link for this training, I will send out the link to some more enhanced in the weeds time and effort trainings. But let's talk about time and effort, because it's year end and it's time to talk about time and effort. I've got all the CFRs here. If you want to go read all that crazy language, what does it mean? It means that the Uniform Grant Guidance, which is around federal funding, tells us that there's certain standards that apply when you're using federal funds. Within it, it talks about keeping time and effort. Anyone that's paid in full or in part, or a stipend, extra duty hours, those, if you're paid out of federal funds, you got to have some time and effort. It's also known as a time distribution report or record. And really, what is it? Think about it this way. Does the time that you paid reflect the effort of what someone worked? That's all time and effort is. And then you have a log sheet that the right people sign off for. And I've got links again to everything in here. We got to make sure that everything, including your wages, salaries, associated costs, all of that, are for the right people doing the right work, getting billed to the right grant funding stream. Why is it so important? Well, I have the education department, we've referred to them as ED in this training. We've got their cost allocation guide that tells us, specifically having quotes here, charges to federal awards for salaries and wages have to be based on the records that accurately reflect the work performed. Does the time match the effort? The time billed, does it match the effort of who did? For which department and for which funding stream? And you don't want to ever have questions about this or audit findings, because if your auditor finds, for instance, or if the State Department's doing an audit and we find that, you know, the contract that we pulled for this person said there's supposed to be a 0.5 in migrant ed and a 0.5 in special ed, but we can clearly see from the payroll that you billed it all to special ed. That's a huge finding. Guess what you got to do? You got to pay that money back. Nobody wants to have to go to the superintendent and say, oh, we have a finding and I need to bill back $50,000 to the general fund. You know, these things happen, but let's try and make sure that time and effort helps us so that does not happen. And our friend, the compliance supplement, everybody's favorite from last month, it tells auditors they have to adhere to this, that tells them what they have to look for and what LAAs have to have in place. You have to have written policies and procedures that outline your processes, that says how you manage these costs and how you keep it all straight. You have to have the management there, your folks that either in payroll or your supervisory folks, it's their responsibility to be accountable for all of these actions. You have to have controlled activities that make sure the right people are billing their costs to the right place, and the appropriate people have to sign off on these activities. If you are not muted, please make sure you mute. Thank you. All right. So management has to review this periodically too. And when it says management, this is talking about any federal program across the country, right? So this could be Department of Justice. It applies to them as well, but it applies to you guys too. You got to have the right people. Determining the right people are paid. We all know that sometimes somebody gets promoted or moved to another department. Well, hey, did anybody think to update the time and effort? We don't want to be in that non-compliance scenario where you have to go to the superintendent, like I said a minute ago, and say, hey, I need to fork out 50 grand. We made a mistake. It could be tiny, but we know that you guys aren't doing it on purpose. We just want to make sure you guys remember that you don't want to ever have a penalty or be accused of doing something that was inappropriate. And we just want to balance our books. We don't want findings, okay? Now, who is required? Everybody that is paid in full or in part. That's me and my annoying highlight for you. I'm using the highlighter. I'm telling you right here. Everybody, if you are paid even a smidgelet. So make sure that you guys are maintaining these records. And this includes staff that are paid, this is this middle bullet here, as part of maintenance of effort for special education. And the reason why, and this throws people off, you need to have a time and effort if you're paid in special ed pretty much in any capacity, because at any point you can tie portion of the match that you are required to pay out of your maintenance of effort for Medicaid billing. So just to have everybody have a time and effort, at least a semi-annual. Keep your ducks in a row, just have it there to distinguish who is paid where. And here we are coming up on year end. This is who is required, but who really should be doing it. So talk about that in your process that you put together for your procedures. Is it payroll? Does payroll do a last report to somebody by department? Do they say, or someone in the business office say, hey, here's everybody that's still being paid out of these funds. Is this still correct? Well, the person that's approving the timesheets every month really should be looking at that. But depending on what your actual time system allows, there's some great products out there like Time Clock Plus. It actually shows you the funding stream each time you approve payroll, but some of them don't. So you might need that payroll report so you can see that Joan was paid out of this fund and Max was paid out of that, and Dan over here. And yes, that's where they work. They're in the right place. I'm going to sign off for it, and we're going to finish that year end. Okay, so again, that policies and procedures, make sure that you have that at least a minimum, what type of documentation is being maintained, who's doing it, and the requirements within it. Who's going to sign off? What type of, is it a personnel activity report, semi-annual certification? We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, speaking of those documentation pieces, these are the 6 standards. We get more in the weeds in our more in-depth training, but this tells you what you're supposed to be doing. Has to be supported by a system of internal controls. And that really gets into who is actually signing the timesheet, who's looking at it on a regular basis, but then, who in accounting or otherwise is able to make sure that the distribution of the salaries and wages is at the right cost objective. That means the program. Was it supposed to be out of title? Was it supposed to be out of gen ed? Was it supposed to be out of special ed? That's what that all means. Okay. Now, I get asked a lot about electronic submissions. Remember, I just said Time Clock Plus? There's a lot of fantastic programs out there that does it for you. You might be able to use your little electronic payroll system to do it for you. How exciting would that be if you learned that you didn't even have to do anything other than make sure that the people signing off on the timesheets are doing it accurately? But you probably still have to document it, though, and say that each time we have a payroll, our supervisors that approve the time cards are also verifying the account code and make sure that the right people that are assigned by their contracts say they're getting paid to do what they said they're doing. That's what that means. And this is one of my favorite slides. It helps you understand if they're an employee or a contractor or they use for match. Is time and effort required? So this is a good one to keep on your wall. So if you want to take anything away from it, maybe this is the one for you that helps you understand if they're going to be required to do time and effort. So again, maybe that's your favorite slide of today. Okay, Reconciliation and closeout. Here we are at year end. You guys, this is the time. We've got a bunch of supervisors that might be going off contract here for the summer, but guess what? You need them to sign off and say, hey, yep, that's the end of year capture. Everything looks good. I'm going to sign that second half of the year semi-annual certification for my staff. Just making sure that we moved Becky out because she moved over to Gen Ed. Great. She's not in here anymore. That kind of thing. Want to make sure that you guys take a look at that. It's super critical. Plus, you probably have folks that are leaving. So what if you've got the supervisor is the only one that knows what happened and that this is the end of their year? They didn't renew their contract with you. They're going to another district. So make sure you guys think about those things. Who's leaving? Who do we need to sign off before they leave for your year end? Now, also reconciling your budget to actual. If you're using budget estimates, you really, it's not the best practice. But, you know, take a look at your budget, take a look at your actual. It's a good high level approach to see if you're off from your budget to actual, to see if maybe you need to take a look at why that's changed. Oh yeah, it's because Becky moved out of our department to another department. So take a look at those. And you know, the LEA can adjust your records on a regular basis to keep up with that. I would recommend that. Don't just wait till year end. It's probably a lot more cleanup unless you don't have a lot of movement. But really, you have to make sure that you can't overspend your federal grants. That's the bottom line. You can't have a negative fund balance in a federal fund. So make sure that you guys balance out, that the right people are in the right place. And employee exits, again, that's another thing that gets people that so-and-so left. So make sure that if you have like a strategy or some sort of a checkout for the final paperwork, or they're turning in their time, their last time sheet, and they're turning in their badge or whatever else they're turning into you, make it part of that closeout process with your employees that they sign their time and effort, or that you have their manager sign off on that final piece, because that might be the last time you see those people. Now, again, I talked briefly about the different types. We have those other trainings that are much more in-depth than today, where they talk about semi-annual certifications, meaning you're paid out of one program. I only work for migrant ed, or I only work for gen ed, or I only work for special ed. Then you have what's known as a personal activity report, a PAR. That means you work for both. Maybe you work for something that's totally gen ed most of the time, but you help in the classroom on Fridays in the special ed room for some reason. Well, you're going to have to be able to distinguish that. Now, if it's a fixed schedule, there's different types of these PARs, these personal activity reports. Just says, what is the employee doing on any given day on this calendar? But if it's a fixed schedule, you can turn that in its place. You have to delineate that, yep, see the fixed schedule on this contract says 50-50, 50-50 migrant ed, 50% special ed. It's Monday, Tuesday from this hour to this hour in this program. It just has to be able to be very easily identified. This is something auditors check for. This is something the SDE checks for if we're auditing your programs. So make sure that you know what that is. And again, we'll send out a link to a more in-depth training. Or if you guys at the end decide, hey man, we really just need another in-depth training, you guys let me know, because we will do it for you. And then I have a list of some of the things that trip you guys up if there's those positions that change. Duties, funding stream split. We ran out of this one and we forgot to change everybody over to that one because we were spending out our ARPA or our ESSER money maybe. And then you forgot to put people back in for time and effort somewhere else. Maybe you just didn't train the staff responsible and they don't even know that they're supposed to be doing this. Perhaps the ratios budgeted is different from what's actually happening on the actual payrolls. Or maybe you don't have the whole day counted for, or the whole month for some people, or maybe there's no actual supporting time and effort documentation out there, period. And the last bullet on here, we have a lot of confusion over stipends. If you pay in a stipend to go to a training or something else, you got to document it. If it's a one-timer, just write it on the time and effort log, but make sure it is transparent for any auditor to be able to tell that you are keeping track of the fact that you paid John an extra 8 hours off contract out of this federal fund this one time. So make sure that that's all there. And I just have, again, some Q&A from some prior trainings that we did around the stipends that you guys can refer to. Can we do those electronic signatures? So just keep those in mind. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those. This is the one I wanted to spend a little more time on. At the end of the year, what kind of percentage variance can we have? The answer is none. You really have to tie it out. You have to say, how did John spend the year and how did Susan spend the year? We really have to have it tied out. So I know that's a pain. It might be that you're sitting there with the payroll person at the end saying, hey, I just want to make sure that you move John and Susan out of this fund and back to the other one for that last payroll, because we flattened out the Medicaid back to zero and we're out of funds. So now it's going over here. Make sure that you have those conversations. Worst case scenario, if you have a finding, we're going to tell you how to correct it. But we never want you to have to open up your audit and make adjustments. And it's just, if you can just keep it clean, that is the goal. Okay. I have links to some of the other documents. You'll see the single cost objective, fixed time distribution, that PAR, all of that stuff. You guys are going to be super at this. I just know it. And again, I will send out a link or just some slides from a more in-depth time and effort training. And with that, I wanted to introduce somebody from the federal programs team. This is Sarah Seamont. She's the coordinator for migrant ed programs. Many of you guys know her. She's going to tell you guys about another component that's very specific here at the SDE. It's specific to the CFSGA. So Sarah, are you out there?
I am.
All right.
And I don't know if I can talk as fast as you do, Lisa. I don't think I've had enough caffeine for that. But yeah, we're gonna.
Kat, this is for you. You talk. I went fast, so you can talk as slow.
Okay.
So here you go.
So what we have is in the CFSGA, we have an Excel spreadsheet example, and that Excel spreadsheet, I think, can be a very useful foundation for time and effort because it allows you to have a place where you keep track of how much does this person get paid and what percentage is coming out of multiple programs. So it is a support document. There's a template there. You can use your own. You can use this as a jumping off point so that you can create something that works better for you. You could add a column for IDEA. When we look at the actual document, you'll see that it really is focused on federal programs that are within that report in the CFSGA or do their planning there. But I think it could be used for other programs as well. So in the CFSGA, you're going to go to the Supporting Documents tab in any program that requires that you have it. And I believe that's just about all of them. It for sure is there for migrant education. So when I went in, you'll find that they do have a tendency to put in some links that are teeny tiny, and that if I did not highlight in yellow, you might not even realize that there was a link there. So when you're on that tab, you're going to see a place where it says upload an Excel file of FTE counts for your Title 1C program, includes school, job title, number of people, and FTEs. And then right next to that, it says example. So go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so what is this document used for? It is set up to calculate the dollar amount for each program based on the percentage and total salary. So this document is intended to do a lot of the math for you. It will also calculate the total percentage to ensure that each person's salary by program adds up to 100%. And then totals for each program are calculated in the last row. So if you go to the bottom, you're going to see that there's a total for each program, and each program has its own column. We are not going to have you enter the salary by program. You're going to put the total salary in, and you'll see that when we get to the actual spreadsheet. You're going to put the total salary in and the percentages that people are getting paid out of, and the math will be done for you. That's how much they should get paid, the actual dollar amount. All right, next slide. So the spreadsheet is only for salaries, and we should not be including benefits here. I know benefits are a huge cost and that they're critically important, but we're looking at overall salary and percentage of salary. So this is just for the salary. Additional rows may be added if needed. There's probably, 15 rows in there. If you have more staff than that paid out of federal programs, you can absolutely insert as many rows as are needed. And the column other can be used for other funds. And the reason for that other column is so that you have a way for it to come up to 100%. If we only listed Title 1A or Title 2, Title 1C, Title 3A, any of those programs, If we only had our federal programs in there, then in some cases, someone's salary would not add up to 100%. In order to get that to happen, we had to add an other column. So let's go to the next slide. So when you're filling out the support document, here are the things that you will fill in. Their building assignment, that's important for Title 1A. The staff name is optional. It's sometimes helpful for you, but you certainly don't have to give it to us. The staff position, that is important. The FTEs that the person has. So I know for classified staff who work less than 40 hours a week, even if they're full-time, that FTE amount will be less than 1, and that's okay. When we are looking at the total salary and the percentage of salary, it will not use the FTE to calculate that. It will just be a pure percentage of their total pay. And then you'll enter the percentage of salary for each program and the total salary in the last column. So like I said before, you will not actually enter the individual proportions of salaries. You'll just put the percentages in, the total at the end, and it will tell you how much money is coming out of each program. All right, next slide. And this is tiny. I am so sorry. I guess I just realized mine is not full size on my screen. So if you look here, this is the sample document. Obviously, if you're going to use this document, you'll want to delete the data that's in the first 3 rows. Those are just examples. So this district is Wonderful School District. And the building, we have 3 buildings. We have Happiness, Learning Middle School, and Opportunity High School. And those are the staff members. And so the first person is the migrant family liaison. That's 100% of the person's time. It is 1 FTE. And so, or no, it's not 100%. So as the person who's doing this, filling out this document, I'm going to put in the first 3 columns, the first 4 columns, and then I'm going to go to each of the different programs. So Title 1A, 10%, Title 1C, 80%, and Title 3A, 10%. So that, you'll notice in the second to the last column does add up to 100%. Then I'm going to, and I didn't have to put that 100% in. It calculates automatically. Then I get over to total salary, and I put in the amount that this person is making. That's just salary, no benefits. At that point, the system will, or the Excel spreadsheet will calculate how much money is coming out of each program. So in this case, I have somebody who's the majority of their funding is coming out of Title 1C migrant. So if you think about it, when you're looking at, do I need to do a semi-annual certification or a PAR? I would be curious to know how many people can answer that question. Does Myra Guerrero, does she need a PAR or a semi-annual certification? If you know the answer, put it in the chat. I would be curious to see who can say what the answer is. And then the next person, Julie West, is a Title 1A. She is 100%, nice job, Tamara, 100% out of Title 1A, and so all of her salary is coming out of that program. That one's a little easier. And then the last example includes somebody who is paid 10% out of other. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you might want to, if you're going to use this spreadsheet, also include your IDEA, make another column, 2 columns actually for IDEA, and then you can just copy the formulas over. So other right now is kind of a catch-all so that we can allow our row to add up to 100% if people are paid out of programs other than the ones that each have their own column listed. So the items in yellow need to be filled out by the district, and the items circled in blue will calculate on their own. And then the nice thing is, when I get down to the bottom and I look at Title 1A, I can tell from this document with these 3 people that we are spending $26,184.50 out of Title 1A. If you are someone that fills out the CFSGA, you know that when you go to Title 1A, at some point you're going to be asked for salaries. For Title 1C, it's going to be right there on your budget page. It's going to ask for your salaries. $21,149 or $25,149 is the total. And so you can just transfer that amount directly into salaries. Benefits you'll have to calculate separately. All right, and I think that may be the last slide that I had.
That's your last one? Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Sarah. Again,
And if you have questions on filling this out, feel free to shoot me an email. If you would, the original document, you can download it from the CFSGA. If you're not sure where that is, if that's not something that you use, feel free to email, and I'm happy to send you the Excel spreadsheet.
It's fantastic. This is a great example of things you might not even recognize were there, but now you know you need to use them. So again, thank you from federal programs. Remember, the CFSGA is the application for funding for several other federal programs that you see listed. So make sure that you guys don't lose sight of that. And with that, I have a slide from a couple months ago. We talked about when we were talking about boards and how do we present to our boards. What's your mission? What is your strategic plan and goals? Can you tie the investments and activities to outcomes? Can you be prepared to talk about all kinds of crazy things on the fly? How do you leverage these resources? How do you present this in a meaningful way to all the stakeholders? I am so glad you asked, because today you are so lucky that you are going to have a lovely little presentation from our new hire, Israel Silva. He is our financial specialist senior for the special education program. I am going to give him control, and he's going to teach you guys all about data dashboards. Welcome, Israel.
Hello. Can everyone hear me all right?
You got it.
Yeah. So let me just pull up the presentation here. So yeah, we'll just start. What are data dashboards? Sorry. So data dashboards are basically just visual representations of key performance indicators, and they're present data as charts, graphs. They use interactive elements that allow you to drill down and understand the data just better than you normally would be able to, because visualization generally helps. So the benefits of a data dashboard are that they allow you to track and monitor data for budget allocation, expenditure, revenue, and resource utilization. They help set benchmarks, and their main help is that they allow you to have the identification of trends and patterns and anomalies in data, because it's a lot easier to notice an anomaly when you see a giant spike or dip in a pattern over time, and then you can drill down on that and figure out why that is. And it also helps because it consolidates information from different departments into a single interface, so it allows you to see a big picture overlay of everything. So I just built a simple data dashboard using Power BI. So it's a business analytic tool developed by Microsoft. It allows users to just create interactive dashboards, reports, and charts. It integrates with other Microsoft products, which is why I used it, since it easily integrates with Excel. And there's free and paid versions. The free version is just for like desktop, and if you pay, you can have cloud sharing and all of that stuff. Anyway, so getting started with Power BI, you can go and you can download it for free. There's a link that's here. When we post the slides, you'll be able to click on this link or this slide and be able to go and download it. So anyway, before you can use make a data dashboard, you'll want to clean up your data. So here's an example of data that wouldn't be able to really work in a data dashboard, inconsistent in a lot of different ways. And then here's an example of data that's been cleaned up that you're able to just throw in, and it would be able to get something that you can use. Then all you need to do is open up Power BI, and you can select from different options. I just imported from data from Excel, and then you can do this. Basically, it's simple as dragging and dropping different data, and you can visualize it in a bunch of different ways. Line charts, or line charts that show stuff over time, bar charts by object description, things like that. And it's easy as just dragging and dropping stuff into the dashboard. And then I also have an example of one that I built, and you can see how it allows. Oh,
There you go.
there we go. Sorry. Yeah, and you can see how it allows for interactivity. You can drill down on sections. What was in Fund 521? You see large percentage. Drill down again. You can see Blue Cross. You can see when it spiked, when it didn't, things like that. And this is a fairly simple dashboard. It didn't take me very long to build. You can throw a bunch of different filters if you want to go look at supply. Whoops, sorry. It doesn't let me scroll, which is annoying. There we go. You want to look at supplies, you can see how that's spent over time, which codes it's coming out of. And then you can drill down and see further descriptions of what all the supplies are and stuff. So yeah, that's just a simple overview, and I'll turn it over back to Lisa.
All right, thank you so much, Israel. Isn't this exciting when you guys get a new idea? I mean, there's so many things you guys could do with that. When you think about you're at a board presentation, and you think about they ask you a question of, well, how come the benefits were so high in this month? Well, you say, well, that's when we had to pay the PERSI bill. You know, you'll be able to drill down on that live, even if you just make the dashboard for yourself. So again, thank you so much for that intro to data dashboard. That was your presenter, Israel Silva. He's our senior financial specialist. And then as a reminder, you got to make sure you check your own internal policies, because Power BI, for instance, could be something that's published. So you got to make sure you scrub that data if you're going to publish it to a website or share it with certain people, to make sure there's no PII, any personal information in there. So depending on where you pull it from, I mean, you could use that for student trending info, but you wouldn't want to have student data as far as names, right? So you would want to make sure that you scrub that data appropriately and that you check with your systems administrator to make sure you're allowed to use that program. Now, again, we're not trying to plug here for Microsoft products. That just happens to be what the State Department has. We don't use Google or Tableau, but that's another example of another type of actual software that does this type of stuff. We don't support or any one program or product over another. We just want you guys to think differently about how you might be able to utilize and present your data to people. I know that if you know, you're talking to people that maybe you're on your school board that are not finance experts, but you can show them how we had a whole bunch of revenue during this time because we had all this pandemic funding, and now here's actually where we're sitting. Look at this giant dive. I mean, a picture speaks 1,000 words, right? So just remember that. Okay, thank you again. And now let's talk about inventory training. Why are we doing this? Well, the first reason I'm doing it is because we are getting a lot of findings where people are finding that you guys don't have systems or practices or policies and procedures in place to keep track of your federal inventory. So we're going to talk about, tell me why, give me reasons. Why are we doing this? We'll talk briefly about capitalization, tagging, components of the records, disposal, just the common findings and some Q&A on this. But first, tell me why should we maintain an inventory management system for federal grants? Well, we need to for accountability, number one, and transparency, but it's to safeguard taxpayer investments, including all this money that comes from the feds. And we want to make sure that we know where the equipment is and that it's in a working condition. So give me more reasons why. Well, here is the federal code. And right below that is Idaho code. So this is why, because you'll get findings if you don't. Okay, and you can click on those, there'll be live links. Now, let's talk about that first one about CFR 200 or 2 CFR 200-313, which is about equipment. It talks specifically about how you have to manage and dispose of equipment with if it's been acquired under a federal award. So first, let's define it. How do we define it? Well, it's a tangible personal property. It has a useful life of more than 1 year, and usually a per unit acquisition cost that equals or exceeds the lesser of the capitalization level that is established by your LEA. So for federal, it's $5,000. Now, if a district has a lower amount that you guys have on policy that you guys capitalize anything that's $2,000 or whatever, you got to follow whichever one is more strict. So keep in mind, again, the useful life of more than 1 year. And we get a lot of questions about computing devices, but if they're less than $5,000, they could still be treated as equipment for internal control purposes, so that you know that it's only an $1,800 laptop, but it came from federal funding. We still want to inventory and tag it so we know that it belongs to this one specific program or department. All right, now how about supplies? Some people consider, laptops as supplies. They consider it a consumable. But let's talk about the definition, the federal definition of a supply. It talks about this, that a computing device is a supply with acquisition. Again, the lesser of the capitalization allowable from your district that you guys in your LEA have established, regardless of the useful life. So again, if you have more strict policy for anything, equipment or supplies, you follow that because that's what your district or your LEA has set. So again, what is capitalization? That's just the threshold that you guys determine. Could be $500 that you guys want to keep track of everything. So if the acquisition cost was $450, it wouldn't be required for you to have that inventory. But if you guys say, nope, we want to have all, whatever your level of a threshold for your own internal policy is, you got to keep track. If it follows the federal guidelines of that 5,000, you're really only going to be looking at those bigger purchase ticket items. However, small attractive items should really be accounted for. They might be some little gadget, but you used tax dollars, to buy these things. You need to know where your property is. That's the bottom line. Now, this talks about all the things you need to have on your inventory. So make a checklist for this. Make sure that your inventory does all of these things. The description, the serial number, some way to identify it, who the title holder, like we bought it with special ed money, it belongs to special ed, the acquisition date, all of these different pieces. The location is key. What building and classroom is it in? You got to be able to find it, because part of monitoring could be that we ask to see your inventory and then we ask you to produce that. We'll just take a sample and say, show me line number 5. It says that you have a smart TV and where is it located, and show me. I want to go see it. So make sure you have this all put together, and you should have a date of an annual inventory audit on that as well. Now let's talk about tagging. What should the tag have? Got to say who's the owner, which school district, which school building, the location, the resource room, where's it at, which program, is it IDEA Part B, special ed, migrant ed, Perkins, who owns this equipment? It was bought with title funds. It's gen ed, it can be anywhere. So make sure you have some way to do this. But tag should not be super easy. It can't just be a little peely sticker like this. The goal of tagging has to be, the idea behind it is that so you can kind of know who owns it, where it goes. It could be a color coding system, but it's got to be more than that. It needs a serial number, something that says I belong to X department, and here is my ID number. So make sure that you guys put something quality in place. Now, also, we need to not lose sight of the fact that we have Idaho code rules that require an annual physical inventory procedure. Now, federal says only every other, but Idaho says, nope, we want you to take a look every year. This is a great opportunity for you guys to make sure that your equipment is in working order and that you know where it is. And if it's not in working order, you probably need to replace it. So that's another good thing that it does for you. Now, we also have that disposable of equipment. What do we do? Like if the grant ends, or when it's just, we've totally capitalized it, it's, depreciated if we've done that. But what do we do with it? Can we keep it? Can we sell it? Possibly, but you must pay a share based on the actual percentage of wherever this came from if you sold it and made money off of it. If it's under $5,000, you can keep, sell, dispose, no obligation to the feds, to ed, okay? Same with supplies. You might have had a certain thing that was deemed a supplies, and if it was over $5,000, you can keep or sell. But again, if you sell and make a profit, you have to, make sure the right program gets that piece of the actual revenue that you earned off of that. If it's under that 5,000, same as the other piece, you guys can dispose of it. No obligation to the education department. Now, how about this one? Fiscal monitoring findings. This is really where this all came from. We have had a lot of monitoring findings that we don't have any sort of inventory for federal programs. Well, maybe you don't need one because the only thing you ever use federal funding for is salaries. If that's the case, then you wouldn't have one, but you still need a policy that tells you if we had a, this is what we would do. And this is our school district level or our LEA level inventory procedure. We would follow this and do this annual inventory if we were to ever use these federal funds. You still have to have this, okay? And the incomplete property records, just missing data. Oh yeah, I can see on your ledger that you bought some capital equipment. Now show me the inventory tags. Oh, we don't do that. Well, you need to do that. So now a couple Q&As, just keep you on your toes. During your inventory of grant purchased, let's say federal grant purchased equipment, you discover a piece is missing. Well, you're in compliance still, as long as you update the inventory records that this went missing. I know that seems strange, but if you actually have that, this went missing, it was last used in the summer school program and it got lost somewhere, but so we're just line iteming out. We know it existed, but we cannot find it. Is that okay? Well, the answer is false. You have to have a control system to try and prevent it. And any loss or damage, you can't just cross it out and say, well, we lost it. You actually have to look into it. So your policies and procedures have to say, we have safeguards to make sure that we know where this inventory is. And then if something went missing, we would have so-and-so be the person that would look into it and try and find it. If you can document that you at least looked into it and you could not find it still, then that would be acceptable. More questions. How about pursuant to Edgar? That's our education department specifics of an inventory equipment purchased in whole or in part with federal funds. Well, again, that was that every 2 years. So every 2 years they require that you do that annual that inventory, but the state has more strict here in Idaho. So don't want you to forget that little point from before. So you're supposed to do those physical inventories every year. Even more questions. Let's say our special education department has all this fancy equipment and they won't ever let us use it, even when it's not being used. And they tell us that it's because they can't. Well, the answer is this says, this 2 CFR 200-313, which is that equipment, it allows for usage of activities pertaining to the grant under which it was purchased to be ranked by priority. So you could loan it out, but first, if Migrant Ed paid for it, then Migrant Ed gets to use it. They get to determine if they can loan it out, if it's considered appropriate. So it could be that there's, some projector or something. So you would have to put something together. So what would this look like? Some little sheet that you can check it out. Who's the owner? Who's borrowing it? When's it coming back? So just keep that all in mind. And this also applies for other federal funding, like if it was purchased with title funds. So it's not just specific to special ed because I'm saying it applies to all federal programs. So put something together if that is something that you guys decide as a district would be okay and you feel like you could keep track of. So you guys, I talked so fast, but I wanted to leave time for some questions. Do we have any major questions? Complaints? I'm trying to look at the chat here. Let's see. I recommend the bigger. Okay, this is Sarah answering for everybody.
Well,
But do we have any other questions?
This was me volunteering, but I think it's best practice, even if something doesn't have to be inventoried, and I'm specifically referring to migrant programs that have preschools. You've got a lot of money invested in furniture, and so please make sure that those are marked or tagged in some way, so that if somebody leaves, those items are still identified as belonging to that program. But definitely the computing devices need to be on the inventory and need to have an actual inventory system around them.
Absolutely. Yeah, so she has a really good point too with furniture. Furniture is one, it's expensive. That's not one you're going to loan out, probably. That's one you're going to want to keep. And then just back to just thinking about inventory in general, if you don't have anything in place, we will send out some links to some inventory sheets that we have on the federal programs page that will come out with a recap from this training that will talk about where to get started and an inventory sheet you could use. But yeah, Sarah had a point here too, that shiny and small technology might be an easy thing for people to lift. So make sure you have ways to keep track of that if it might need to be locked up. So think about all those different things that you need to put into your policy. And then I don't want to take away from any questions that we might have around time and effort, because we have a lot of folks that get confused about time and effort because they've got splits and they want to make sure, am I supposed to use this par thing, or when can I use the fixed distribution? I'll send out a more in-depth training on that. You could probably put a condition in there that says, I'll just have this par, this calendar filled out with our schedule, so that it's linked in some way to the time and effort, so that you can see that it's transparent. It shows how the people spend their time, but maybe you don't have to fill it out every month. Maybe you just fill it out and say, this is the schedule. So those are pieces I want to take away from. Austin, I will put the code. Don't have it handy right this second, but it's in one of our previous slides, but I'll make sure to send that to you about the state. And he's asking a question in our chat about the state code for inventory records. So I'll make sure to put that in there. And then again, we're just talking about summertime coming up, discussion time. We're going to talk briefly about year-end strategies. I just want to know from you guys what kind of things you want. Next month is really where we're going to dive in. It's our June communities of practice. We're going to talk about accrual strategies. Who has the list of how do you look at your last encumbrances and say, is this actually going to happen? And you have so-and-so contact the program managers before they're off contract and say, who's doing this? Is this actually going to happen? It's encumbered. Is it, should I be waiting for this invoice to get paid? Or maybe you're billing somebody else and you're going to put together an accounts receivable. What does it look like? What does your accounting for the summer look like? I have this funny meme for you here about that look you get when everything balances in your financial statements. Your finance people are working super hard to close everything out, to get the reimbursements to the district. And then we have the Oprah meme here about you get an audit. I just sent out a whole bunch more audits to folks, and I'm sure they're probably like, no, but everybody has to have an audit at some point. And we're all getting ready for our CPA audits, right? Everybody's doing all this time and effort, truing up and shoring up of their accounts, because you're all essentially going to need to close your books. Everybody gets an audit. So I'm just kind of watching this chat to see if there's anything else that ends up coming in. But I want to see if last time we had an interest in some maintenance of effort training. So I am going to do one on June 1st, I believe, at 11 a.m. I'll send a registration out. It'll also be recorded, but it's just to kind of help you guys with the strategy of closing out. When do we draw the line in the sand? What's going on with Medicaid? I promise it won't be so jam-packed. So you guys can just ask lots of questions for your own specific needs. And then I was going to do a final IDEA Part B application refresher sometime in July, and that's when that one opens up to help you guys understand what to put in there. But any other requests I want people to send our way, could be for any federal grant component that you have questions on. Maybe, you really just need a deeper dive about parent engagement strategies, or who knows, whatever it might be for a specific grant program. Ask. We want to train you guys. We want you to feel like you have the keys to run these successful programs. So send those our way if you have them. And then I just want to make sure that you reach out. We will have all of these contacts in here as well for special education. And I really just always want to thank you. These are our 3 presenters from today. I want to thank you guys. You guys do a great job, and we want to make sure you're feeling like you can lead with courage, strategy, and confidence. That's our whole purpose here behind the stuff that we give to you, these trainings that we offer. So with that, that's all I have for you guys today. If you can think about anything else, let me know, but don't forget your why. That's my last piece, I guess, to share with you guys, is don't forget your why. Thank you guys so much. Our children are the future, and you guys are making a difference to everyone. And that's a wrap for today. You guys have a great day.